the Kachmann Mind, Body, Spirit show. This will be very interesting today. I'm going to teach you how to avoid cancer through proper nutrition and also the effects of your thought process, positive and negative thinking. This is going to be very interesting. We'll start with the first part about eating the right food. About 50 to 70% of cancer can be avoided. Yes, I want you to get that straight. 50 to 70% of cancer can be avoided. And you will know this subject very well time we're done today. Okay? And so first, I'm going to call it the sick kid of the non-diet. I'm not going to ask you to follow a diet, but I want you to eat the proper type of food. And this is based on many books. And to eat a nutrient-dense diet. What do we mean nutrient-dense food? That's largely foods of color. You can add mushrooms and onions. They don't have color. But 70, 80% of the time, that's a good start. And then to avoid pure sugar. Don't add sugar and eat a lot of sugary projects because sugar is a cancer feeder. Yeah. Otto Warburg, 1930, German chemist, he wrote those original papers, and sugar is a cancer feeder. I want you to get that straight. So 100% whole grain. So you're going to eat some sugary carbohydrate products. Make sure it's a whole grain. Then complex carbohydrates. That means, for example, vegetables or carrots or broccoli or complex carbs has some sugar in them, but there's very complex sugars. There's fiber. They're hard to break apart. And then mainly foods that are 50% or less on the glycemic index. Remember, the glycemic index was established to see how quickly your blood sugar goes up. You eat white bread, bingo. That's very high in the glycemic index. Vegetables, for example, or fruits are down 20 or 30. So I want you to eat under 50%. White rice would be an 80. Black, interesting, actually, brown rice would be 60 to 70. So that's still a lot of sugar. So eat a lot of vegetables, okay? And I'll tell you the reason shortly why, and beans and legumes and peas and fruit. And you got to eat some fat too, omega-3 fats, the good fats. Omega-6 are the bad fats. And I'll teach you all about that, okay? So there's a start. Here I have Rudy's Food Pyramid. You can get a copy by going to the Three Rivers Pharmacy. I have copies available for you there. We give them away to you free. And what I'm saying is, see, this is the amount of each food, okay? You see at the bottom here, for example, you see mainly broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and tomatoes and carrots and peppers and kale, for example. And then you go further up and I named the fruits and some nuts. And then as you work your way up, you'll see some fish as number 2 and 3. So, I mean, fish is okay as long as it's from the ocean, not from a pond, because what are the fish are eating? Corn. They feed them corn, genetically modified corn. It's not healthy. So if we go to a restaurant or at home and you fix some fish, find out where did it come from. Ask the waiter. I mean, I go to a country club around here and they'll say the Scottish salmon. Well, come to find out it comes from a fish pond, okay? So always ask where it comes from, because that determines whether they are the good fats or the omega-6, the bad fats, okay? So there are toxins in food depending on what you're eating. Our fat cells, suppose you're overweight, they store our toxins that we take in. Chemicals, for example, from gardening or hairsprays or shampoos, or what they sprayed on the animal, like a cow. They put on pesticides and herbicides and insulin growth factors to make the cow produce more milk. They can increase the yield 10 times by doing those things, but the trouble is those are toxins which your child is drinking or you could be drinking. So fat cells store cancer chemicals in them. So the more overweight you are, for example, the more you have toxins in your body. So animal meat is full of cancer chemicals. Yes. You're eating steaks 7 days a week, you get a problem because it's full of nitrosamines, for example, insulin growth factors, and pesticides and herbicides that they fed the animal and what they're eating. What you eat depends on what the animal ate. Yeah, it depends on what the animal ate. So when you're overweight, there's increased rates of breast cancer, colon cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, related to type of food and being overweight. So just listen to the statistics. With very few people know, especially women, 80% of uterine cancer in the uterus is due to being overweight. 80%. I confirmed that when I was in an elevator with a cancer specialist, a lady from DuPont, and she confirmed what I knew. 80% of uterine cancer is related to being overweight, so you can avoid it. 40% of breast cancer is due to being overweight. It's probably more like 50 or 60%. Yeah, you can avoid, and I wrote a book on it. You can go to Amazon. Breast Cancer Prevention is the Cure is a book I have on Amazon. Read it. It's based on Mayo Clinic books and Susan Love books, full of science. Hardly do you ever meet a woman who knows that 50%, 70% of breast cancer can be avoided. Even Dr. David Katz, the biggest public health official in the United States, out of Yale University, he has that in the cover of his book. Okay? So you see where prevention could play. That's really good news. Can play a huge part. Okay? But you have to act on it, otherwise, you know. And what are superfoods? What are some of the best foods you could eat? Maybe put them in a smoothie or in a salad or with the rest of your meal. Onions, mushrooms. Matter of fact, I have read that if a woman were to eat one slice of fresh onion and one mushroom, cooked mushroom every day, breast cancer rate gets cut 50%. Wow. Wow. I think let's act on that. Mushrooms are very healthy because they're full of vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. They run the machinery of metabolism of our body. So you want to eat, and those are the nutrients, okay? That's when I say nutrient-dense foods, I mean vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals. I tell people, have a smoothie in the morning. Yeah, get some smoothie recipes of Facebook, Kachmann, we got them right there. And a smoothie every morning. To me, that's 50% of health because it's full of nutrients. It meets your nutrient need. You're much less likely to have cancer, type 2 diabetes, and its 50 diseases. And greens, okay? Pomegranates, berries, seeds, tomatoes, strawberries, they're full of healthy phytochemicals. Very interesting. So the anti-cancer solution is called DNA. That does the directing of every one of our cells, okay, through methylation, okay? And you want to decrease methylation. So that's 1 carbon, 3 hydrogen atoms. That's the methyl chemical symbol. Prevention. So we have the opportunity to write our genetic code. Yes, end of our chromosomes are the telomeres, and they can be rewritten by what you do, whether you're exercising, what you're eating, for example. That's preventative. That's called epigenetics. That's a new field, very interesting for you to read about it. And time I'm done, you'll be reading 10 books. No, I teach you the information you need to know. You need to act on it. The less methylation, the less cancer. So more greens, less methylation, less cancer. If you have a smoothie every day of greens, you're on a heck of a start. And if you add, say, a bowl of salad to it, that's one other meal, say through the day, the anti-cancer diet, the anti-diabetes diet, the anti-dementia diet, yeah, can be avoided, okay? So less greens, you have increased methylation, increased rates of cancer. So that's very important. So we talk about cruciferous vegetables. Those are vegetables that, when they're as flowers, they look like crosses. Okay, and examples would be kale and cabbage, and broccoli and cauliflower and turnips, you increase the intake 20%, 40% decrease in cancer rates. Let me read them to you once more. Kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, turnips, because they have in them the phytochemicals called ITCs, glucosinolates, which occur in a variety of cruciferous vegetables, have been shown to exhibit chemopreventative activity. ITCs, they're very important, and they're found in the vegetables which I mentioned to you, because they remove carcinogens and kill cancer cells in your body. Our body makes some cancer cells every day. You wouldn't believe it, yeah, except our immunity attacks them and gets rid of them or repairs them every day. And so it's, also these ITCs inhibit angiogenesis. To develop these masses in tumor cells takes blood supply. That takes growth of blood vessels. These ITCs prevent blood vessel growth. And they're what are called antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, because oxidation and inflammation forms cancer. Insulin, for example, in type 2 diabetics causes, because of higher rates of insulin, because there's more sugar that needs to get into the cell, that causes inflammation, and that's the reason type 2 diabetics have higher cancer rates than other people, okay? Let's speak about the life-saving mushrooms, okay? And they're the queens of superimmunity. Remember I spoke about them before? The greens, remember, eating green, you go to the supermarket and look at all the green vegetables. That prevents most of disease. They're the kings of superimmunity. You want high immunity, start eating like that, because what happens is you re-educate your biome. If you go to YouTube, you can see one of my recent lectures on that. Your life is dependent on your biome. Those bacteria that live in your gut, those trillions of bacteria, they determine your health. They determine your cancer rates. And because of what you're eating, you change the type of bacteria that are in there. Very interesting. So the greens increase natural T killer cells in your body that will kill cancer cells that could show up. Okay, mushrooms do it, onions. Remember I said about the slice of onion and the mushroom for a woman, breast cancer rates go down. And they prevent DNA damage. They repair DNA. Remember, DNA determines whether the cell multiplies or doesn't. So they decrease breast cancer rate 50% or so. ITCs, mushrooms, onions. So they decrease also our estrogen level. The odds of breast cancer increase the longer a woman has estrogen levels in their body. For example, if a child starts drinking milk the day they're born, mother's milk is the greatest, but after mother's milk, what she drinks is not so great. Cow's milk is meant for baby cows. Eat Whitewash by Joe Keon if you think milk is good. I want you to read that book, and you won't be drinking milk again, I assure you. So if a child, for example, starts the periods at age 8 or 9, they lengthen the time they're exposed to estrogen, and that increases their breast cancer rates. Yeah, very interesting. So if your child does that, you have to worry about that. Remember we spoke about onions, and garlic is in the same field. They're anti-cancer, anti-inflammation, okay, antioxidant. Remember, oxidation causes cancer. They increase sulfur compounds, which are anti-cancer, and their nutrients, phytochemicals, are better released if you chop them, crush them, and you chew them. Okay, it could be with your own machine, your teeth, or put them in a blender, a Vitamix machine, or a NutriBullet, or something. And those enzymes that are released detoxify carcinogens. Okay, so you have onions and garlic can decrease colon cancer 56%, ovarian cancer 73%, decrease esophageal cancer 88%, 71 decrease in prostate cancer, 50% decrease in stomach cancer, all to eating more onions and garlic and mushrooms. You can put them in your smoothie in the morning, or add them to your dinner or your lunch. That's fine, but a smoothie a day will keep the doctor away. Okay. Let's go into a little more some specific foods: raspberries, strawberries, cherries, lemons, and the phytochemicals in the lemons will be limones. They're called limones. In cranberries, phenols. In watermelon, lycopenes. In carrots, carotines. That's a surprise. Strawberries have 700 phytochemicals in them. Apples, 500 phytochemicals. Prunes are full of phenols. These are the nutrients that you want to prevent cancer and to lead to a healthy life. Avoid diabetes too, avoid dementia too, and avoid a lot of bowel disease also. So your habits are important, of course, for decreased rates of cancer. Smoking is one of them. When you light up with the smoking, all the chemicals that are in there, they affect every cell of your body. Every cell of your body. So with smoking, you increase cancer rates in every cell in your body. We hear about lung cancer, but smoking increases in every organ that you have. It can be the brain, it can be the kidney, it can be the liver. The lung is the highest rate because that takes most of the heat from smoking. Now we hear about e-cigarettes and vaping in kids, and we see in our high schools that one of the local high schools, I heard 90% of the kids are using e-cigarettes. Yeah, that has nicotine in it, but they think, well, it doesn't have the chemicals of a regular cigarette. Wrong, wrong, wrong. They've never fully studied that smoke, so they don't know. We know definitely there are some. So vaping of the e-cigarettes may decrease the amount of chemicals you're exposed to, but it's still very unhealthy, okay? Slightly better, and we're not even sure it's slightly better, okay? And it's still addictive because it's a nicotine, okay? So excessive alcohol consumption, not 2 or 3 glasses of wine, but excessive alcohol consumption can result in all types of cancer, especially liver cancer, but cancer in anybody, anywhere in the body, especially even breast cancer, for example. So excessive alcohol consumption produces cancer. Stressful life, stress increases cancer also, partly because you're eating more to feel good. It makes that dopamine. I'm in heaven because I ate some sugar, but it leads to weight gain, increased cancer rates. Drug addiction also affected because you're not eating right, and the chemicals themselves, the opioids, for example, have increased cancer rates associated to them. Sedentary lifestyle, they found people who sit around and don't get exposed to exercise, and they have, quote, sitting disease. Okay, if you're sitting too much, increased rates of cancer associated with that. Consumption of a lot of animal products we mentioned before, because of the nitrosamines in them, the insulin growth factors that make cancer cells grow quickly in them, and they're full of chemicals that were put on the animal, the pesticides, the herbicides, the sprays. They put it on there to keep the animal alive, and they fed it genetically modified corn, and which makes it a sugar product. So what you're eating is a poisonous sugar product, and you think you're eating beef. So if you want cancer, eat steak 7 days a week. It'll help lead to it. Not every case, but a lot of cases, okay? And the pollution environment, we spoke about the chemical exposure. I know a recent physician a few years ago died. He owned an orchard, and I do wonder if he was using all these sprays on his beautiful peaches. I ate some of them. God, were they good. Unfortunately, he died, but it makes me think it was the chemicals, because the guy that sold him the chemicals, he died also of a strange brain disease. They both had this very strange brain disease associated with increased chemicals. I wonder. I mean, it's not proof. So all these things I'm going to mention to you affect cancer rates. The amount of exercise you do, okay? There are about 1.5 million cases of cancer diagnosed every year. 65% live at least 5 years. So if you get diagnosed, don't throw in the towel, okay? So how you think, and we'll talk more about later, is important. And about 50% of the deaths are related to, excuse me, are related to lack of exercise, poor nutrition, and stress. Okay? In 1994, the U.S. Surgeon General said lack of physical exercise increases cancer rate, especially for colon and breast cancer. He made that announcement, okay? So it's important to decrease the fat in your body, decrease cancer, which decreases hormones, estrogen, for example, we spoke about, so it can be hormone related, especially endometrial uterine cancer is much higher in overweight people, 80%. Increased ovarian cancer are related also to being overweight, and breast cancer. So females need to be educated about this. I'm doing it, but I remember speaking to about 50 oncology nurses. I couldn't believe it. Just 5 years ago, not one of them knew that the nutrition had anything to do with cancer. And I've been at the med school alumni meeting, and they had the med students on the stage, and asked them how much nutrition teaching they had in 4 years. I think they agreed to 1 to 4 hours. 1 to 4 hours in 4 years. Yet that causes 90% of our illnesses, considering everything else. That really worries me. And I've been to the schools and mentioned that to them. And occasionally I do speak there and have a chance to bring it up. But I think nutrition needs to be #1 subject for physicians, not pharmaceuticals. My opinion. And so exercise improves the immune function, and exercise improves stress control. Patients who exercise tolerate chemotherapy better. Negativity is an abnormal toxic metabolic state. So is cancer. Okay. Remember, cancer is a sugar feeder in nutrition. So oxygenated tissues, where you burn oxygen, have a decreased cancer rate. So that's why the exercise becomes important. So 40% of Americans develop cancer, 40%, okay? But only 14% of people who exercise regularly. Huh, wow, what a difference. What a difference, okay? So I think I've gone over exercise and nutrition, and I think you understand that now, and that's extremely important part of this talk. But the next part, which I've studied extensively, and you will find, I think, quite interesting, is the mind-body, body-mind connection. Candace Pert wrote a book, 1971 or so, and she discovered the receptors that are on every cell of our body. She was looking through an electron microscope at a human cell, and she saw these receptors. They called it the opiate receptor, but these receptors is where our chemicals work. They hit these fingers that opens the door to the cell, sends a message in there. And so our thought process, hormones, neurotransmitters, neuropeptides made by the brain, and serotonin, incidentally, is made mainly by the gut. So the brain speaks to the body, hitting these receptors, and our gut speaks to the rest of our body also, because they make 75% of the serotonin. Remember, I spoke about the mind-body connection. Gershon wrote a book called The Second Brain, talking about the gut. Okay, so every thought, conscious or unconscious affects the physiology of our body. Wow. Even the Chinese and Indians wrote about it thousands of years ago. Remember, they spoke about the spirit and the universe and the heart and the body connection, yeah. They knew it. They just didn't have the scientific proof. They knew it. So every physiological reaction of the body affects the brain, subconsciously, unconsciously. So our brain speaks to our body speaks to our brain. Remember, second brain is living in the gut. They speak to each other. We have to realize that. If you're a constant negative thinker, for example, cancer rates go up. That's been very well studied, and I will tell you more about that. If you tell a patient, or you believe you have 6 months to live, odds are that's about it. But you tell that to a positive thinker and say, you know, the cancer is there, but we get a chance of helping you through exercise and nutrition and other opinions and maybe another round of a different kind of a chemo. The positive thinking tremendously affects the patient, can increase spontaneous remissions, and LeShan published a book said it can double the lifespan of patients many times. Many times cancer is much more common in people who've been under stress, a divorce, a loss of job. These all are related to increased rates of cancer. Been scientifically proven. Okay, so what I've been speaking out about the last few minutes is holistic medicine, the mind and the body. So we consider your physiology. Are you exercising? Our physical activity, the physical aspect, and our spiritual aspect. Do we believe in something? Okay? And what you believe in is up to you, but it can make a difference. I had a habit in my practice of neurosurgery for 43 years. That's in years past. I've been a wellness doctor since. That if I was a priest or a nun or a minister or a rabbi or whatever, I would ask them to say a prayer for healing before surgery or in their room. Those patients did a lot better. Mm-hmm. Why did they do a lot better? Because of the suggestion of the religious leader and the patient. They were secreting more positive chemicals in the body and belief system and reality, and they recovered quicker, better. I'm sure some were cured of their cancer. So I remember I was reading a book, and they had in there a neuropsychologist in New York City who lived down the street where I lived as a child. Never met him, but he would take this patient who had metastatic spread breast cancer all over the body to lunch once a month at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. That alone would make you feel good. I lived 2 blocks from it. Would you believe it? But I did. And then he would, after that lunch, he would take her to walk through the museum to look at her favorite art. We started her 5 years later. No breast cancer. One case doesn't prove it. But then he went on to study and wrote many books and studied many other people. Turns out there's a reality behind it. Okay? So we look at the physiological, the physical, the spiritual. Each person is unique. We're all different. The doctor has to know you. If your doctor doesn't speak to you, doesn't know you, maybe better off getting other doctors. It can't just be, here's your script, here's your chemo, see you later. He must know you, or she must know you. Okay? So each person should be part of the decision-making team. You should help make the decision. Yes, I want that. What does it do? Look up on the internet. Maybe get another opinion, okay? So what I'm saying is the person has a self-healing abilities through the thought process, through reality. It's not an imagination. It's the real secretion of neuroactivity, dopamine, serotonin. You can rewrite your genetic script by your thought process. For example, I had a patient years ago with a horrible malignant tumor, and he said, I'm not going to die. You know what? It took 5 years for this man to die, when normally it took 6 months. And when he did die, I had a CT about a week before, and it didn't show anything, so I'm not even sure he died of that. But that's the first thing he said to me. He sure went to the right doctor, because I bit right into that and help him write books, and his wife was like that too. So how does the brain speak to the body? How does the body speak to the brain? Remember, I told you already about the transmitters, but it's through hormones: ACTH, adrenal corticotropic hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. This is a great communication occurring in your body through chemicals, neurotransmitters, phytochemicals, actually nerves themselves also. They all interact with each other. There's living in our gut. Every cell of your mucosa of your gut has got a nerve going to it. Yeah. And then think of the hormones and the neuropeptides in your body, neurotransmitters, besides the nerve activity, sending direct nerves there, sending hormones there. It's a very active place. So how you think is critical. It's critical. If you want to live, negative thinking is not the thing for you. And here's something interesting called mind mapping. And what I put together is an expression of radiant thinking, and is therefore a natural function of the human mind. In other words, all the things you could do, for example, to survive. And I have an example of the mind map here, and I'll read you a little bit of it. You can get a copy from me if you're looking for a copy. Say, Rudy, I want Cancer's mind map. Okay. I'm giving a lecture, incidentally, on this subject. I'm giving today at Warsaw, in a building attached to the hospital, 11 o'clock on the 8th of December. Okay. And I'll have a PowerPoint of this, 50 of them, maybe 30 I'll give away to the people there. I have 20 if anybody watching here wants one. To get this extensive PowerPoint, I give it to you free, okay? And sit down and maybe listen to the lecture in person I give that day. But what's on this mind map? At the center, I have the healing survival cure rate. What's your healing survival cure rate? So let me go around here. Positive thinking, okay? Are you a positive thinker or a negative thinker? If the cancer doctor says you get 6 months to live, well, if you believe that, you'll probably live 6 months, okay? And what can you do to improve your mind? Creativity, purpose, motivation. You know, if you say, well, I want to watch Johnny graduate from college, thoughts like that, right? I want to do something for Uncle Joe, whatever your motivation is, it'll increase your lifespan. It works, motivation. Social support is helpful. That's the reason they have some breast cancer groups, for example. Group therapy, psychologists can be helpful. Love, a big hug, hopefulness. The doctor says, well, you know, it's 10% chance you might make it. I'm going to do everything in my mind to help you make it. Odds are, increase your odds of that happening, versus you get 6 months to live, okay? Spirituality is important, what you believe, okay? God created me for a purpose, and I want to fulfill my purpose. Family and friends are helpful. Standard medical information is important. Caring providers, holistic providers, medical oncology, radiation oncology, but do they know who they're treating, or is it just a bunch of chemo and a huge bill? Or they're going to talk to you and tell you alternatives, whether radiation has great value or little value. You might want to try something else. And some of your own healing techniques are helpful. Spiritual imagery. I have read a lot of books and teach people to use guided imagery, for example. If they have a cancer, certain spots, and they know where they're at, I ask them to do some meditation, some deep breathing to relax. Maybe use a mantra, that's mind energy, to relax the mind. Repeat the same word, spirit, 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 God, God, whatever. Then visualize, say, an army coming in, going up one leg, entering the body, and shooting to death every cancer cell that's in your body. and then visualize yourself, say, urinating it out or losing the cells in your stool. That's visual imagery. You can influence the function of your immune cells by your mind to some extent, absolutely. That's why negative thinkers don't head anywhere, and positive thinkers influence their own thought process. Remember, the mind and the body are connected through nerves, hormones, neurotransmitters, positive thinking. So use body imagery, and you can get books on that, on meditation and imagery. And you can use immune cell imagery. Maybe you see the immune cells coming in and just going throughout your blood system, your lymphatic system, and killing all the cancer cells, and they're flying away, or urinating them out, or whatever. And remember, I spoke about exercise, yoga, tai chi, exercise, walking, dancing, tap dancing, like I take every week, and have the will to live. There's a book written by Hutchinegger called The Will to Live. I think it's a very good book to read. And he's found that the spontaneous cure rate and length of life increase daily depending on your thought process, okay? So avoid the negative speak. See, what that person did who told you is 6 months to live, that's a nocebo. That'll cause your immune system to shut down. And that's why I'm a little bit concerned of people who go to end-of-life things. I think it's important, very important. They do a great job. They gave a presentation at the Rotary Club the other day. I mean, they're well organized. They do a beautiful job. But now they want to, you can sit down and call them and talk to them before, and you can even start 6 months before. But I tell you this, my own thought, 6 months, that's too long. In 6 months' time, you can do positive things in your life to maybe improve your condition, maybe improve the cure rate. Maybe you can do some imaging and some visualization and some exercise and get another opinion, and maybe you can save your life. To me, 6 months is too long. That's the only objection I got. I think we should get it down to a month or two, because a lot of things can turn around in that time, positive thinkers. So at least it's a point of discussion. It's a wonderful organization, that those nurses that do that, wonderful. They were just great. But 6 months, what's it going to be a year from now? 12 months? No. I think maybe they don't understand the mind-body connection. So, but anyway, enough on this mind map here. Candace Pert wrote a book that really opened my mind around 1971. Dr. Candace Pert, Molecules of Emotion. That's where a lot of my talk on this mind-body connection comes from. Remember, I said she's looking through the microscope and you saw these receptors dancing and prancing, looking for chemicals. So she discovered the emotional body. Yeah, so when I look at people, I see these chemicals dancing on you, and I look at you differently, because I know who you are, what kind of job you got, what kind of family you got, what have been the stresses in your life. I'm going to ask about that. So, our monocytes in our immune cells, they make every neuropeptide in the body. Yeah, they're not just made there, they're also made in our body. Our Army, Navy, Air Force that defends us, made largely in the gut. Most of our immunity is in the gut. They make all those neuropeptides and hormones too, okay? So it's body-mind, okay, mind-body. And there was even a field discussed called PNI, psychoneuroimmunology. Your white cells, monocytes, T cells, bone marrow, spleen, thymus, your Army, Navy, and Air Force can be influenced by your thoughts, positively or negatively, okay? So the will to live is important. It's important. You got to give hope to people. This negative speak, it doesn't work out in preventing cancer. And there's history of this in the literature. It really goes back almost 2,000 years. And Dr. Walter Heil, 1846, nature and treatment of cancer was very clear to him. Questioning its reality would have seemed to struggle against reason, he said, okay? Claude Bernard, 1865, a human being must be considered a harmonious whole. You're not just your x-ray. the nocebo, negative speak, okay? You are more than that. Remember the Chinese and Indians? They thought of the harmonious whole. 1870, Paget, depression plays a vital role in cancer as well as anxiety, and hopelessness increases cancer growth. So sudden stress in the family, a divorce, a loss of job, an accident, death of a child can result, all of a sudden there's cancer. Why is that? Depression, negative thinking. So you have to watch for that. 1893, Snow, the first statistical proof of increased rate of cancer in a group of 250 patients. In 156, there was severe stress, loss of relative, divorce, or death. So you see, I'm proving to you the emotional connection. So patients with severe mental disease like schizophrenic, idiots, or lunatics who have a low rate, who don't have to think, they live in the state of mind, I don't blame them, I'm just saying that's the way it is, have a low rates of cancer because they're not stressed, okay? They live in this state of severe mental illness, schizophrenia, but they don't worry, they don't have stress. Low rates of cancer, isn't that interesting? So paranoids who think too much have higher rates of cancer than normal people. That's all been studied. I'm just trying to prove to you the mind-body connection, okay? Carl and Stephanie Symington, they published many books on this, and they studied many patients, and and those patients taught them that, okay? And this is what they said, a summary of their thought. It's more important to know what kind of a person has a disease. Remember what I said? You gotta know the patient. Then what disease the patient has. Wow, wow, wow. It's more important to know what kind of a person has a disease than what disease the patient has. Wow. And so cancer patients live twice as long if they're taught mind-body medicine, and spontaneous cure rates go up. The Symingtons said that. So if you're diagnosed with cancer, don't throw in the towel. 30 to 45% are cured by modern medicine, okay? But one dies and the other doesn't, although they have the same disease. See what I'm talking about? Positive and negative thinking. Patients taught mind-body medicine live twice as long. They have a higher rate of spontaneous cures. Rudy's good news. Rudy's good news, okay? Spontaneous remissions occur. Just one day, bang, the cancer is gone. People have not scientifically proven in specific reasons, but there have been stories. For example, there was this a ranch hand lady who had cancer, and they had a loving relationship. She had all kind of great animals, and the cancer was gone. Okay, they operated on it, and it was gone. Her husband left her. They got a divorce, and bang, the cancer was back. Then she met a guy, and they got married a year later, and then became a positive thinker, more optimistic thinker. And then the cancer went away. And then he left her, and the cancer again came back. And then they did a renal transplant on her, but accidentally that kidney they gave her had cancer in it. And it just made her much worse. And then within a week, she had metastasis to lung. 1 week. Then they took the kidney back out, and the cancer was gone again. You see what I'm talking about? Immunity can change it like that. In a week, it spread to our lungs. So it's affected by your own immunity. That's what I'm trying to prove to you. So spontaneous remissions have the placebo effect, positive thinking or negative thinking, it comes back. So the will to live, read that. Love, I believe, positive, negative expectations are extremely important. So cancer is a weak cell, a confused cell. Remember, it's a sugar feeder. It takes 13 molecules of sugar to make 1 ATP versus 1 sugar in a normal person, 1 sugar in and you can make ATP1, but it takes 13 molecules of sugar to make one cancer cell. So cancer sugar feeder, Otto Warburg proved that. So we make a few cancer cells every day, but white cells, our own immunity kills them, okay? We make billions, incidentally, we make billions of cells daily. So a mistake, that wouldn't be a surprise, would it be? When we make billions daily. So, but malignant cells are weak and disorganized. We can attack them through what we do. So let's talk about causes of cancer for a minute. Nicotine, tar, chemicals, drugs, if you're around chemicals a lot, spraying, hairsprays, for example. Loss of immunity from drugs, stress, depression, genetic predisposition, poor diet, poor biome, increased rates of cancer, obesity. So 20% of cancer, at least, maybe closer to 50, are caused by diet. Breast, prostate, colon. Remember I spoke about uterine cancer, 80%. Japan had little cancer, but when it came to the U.S., and the rate the same as Americans, different diet, different stress. Interesting, isn't it? And yeah, you put cancer cells in humans, and they're immediately destroyed, okay, because of our immunity, okay? And stress reduces our immunity. Hans Seele published a lot about it. He's a German guy like me. Went to Toronto years ago. He's not alive now, but he was there in the 1950s and 60s. He studied this, 1,000 scientific papers. It's chronic stress, long-term stress. Yeah, he took rats and mice and then stressed the heck out of them, and they developed cancer and heart disease. And matter of fact, NIH refuses to fund any more research on stress and cancer, and chronic stress on animals, because they said Seele proved it. My friend Hans Seele proved it. So all animal research stopped linking cancer and stress. The proof is cancer and stress is 100% certain. And Hans Seele, extremely brilliant man, published 1,000 scientific papers. There's a picture of him right there. He made a definition of stress, and so did a lot of other people, okay? So stress is the inability to cope with perceived, real or imaginary, stress, inability to cope with perceived, real or imaginary, threats to our physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. That's stress. Interesting. Seele called it the non-specific response of the body to stress, but it's a pretty specific response, so. And that's chronic long-term stress. As an individual, you have increased levels of stress. It increases your susceptibility to illness. Start eating bad food, sugary foods. So chronic, long-term stress causes suppression of the immune system. The chronic long-term stress suppresses our immunity. Short-term stress is over quickly. It's over quickly. The lion runs at you, you have acute stress, you're either dead or alive in a few minutes, okay? So chronic stress, loss of white cells, enlarged adrenal glands, enlarged hearts, weight loss, death, that sounds silly, proven to you, that chronic stress has great effects on us. Dr. LeShan, remember I talked about him and psychological evidence. He was an experimental psychologist. He was the foremost theorist of the psychological life history of a cancer patient. And he writes a lot about the emotional factors in the causation of cancer. And he said a patient's youth, a lot of cancer patients' youth was marked by feelings of isolation, despair, and intense interpersonal relationships. He studied about 500. Mm-hmm. Previous strong personal relationships removed, death, divorce, retirement. Remember, I brought this up already. Despair was bottled up. The zest of life left, and the patient simply wanted to die, ready for death. So the negative thinking followed diagnosis, preparing for end-stage living many months away when you don't know quite how you're going to do. Maybe the right thing, could be a mistake because of the negative thought process. Got to watch out what other people are telling you to do. You don't get your wool in order and go along with that, but to decide to move an end-stage living facility ahead of your time could be the thing that killed you, but could be. I'm just trying to open the discussion. And so Dr. LaShan said 76% of 500 patients with cancer had a history of emotional problems or severe stress. Only 10% of the control group without cancer had this pattern. Kind of important, okay? And other studies by Dr. Schmally, patients with cancer frequently had a history of hopelessness and frustration. Interesting. Dr. Green said many patients with leukemia and lymphoma had a history of despair, hopelessness, and discontinuity. I know of a few patients recently that might have been the cause. Yeah. You know, they were selling their house and doing different things, and yeah. Dr. Kissin, heavy smokers, the ones that have cancer, were found to have high rates of chronic stress. Interesting. Don't smoke. No e-cigarettes. No vaping. Still become addicted, leads to other addictions, and there's still chemicals even in the vapors and the e-cigarettes. They have not studied them properly. It's not a good idea. So hopelessness, helplessness, death is the solution. Recovery. Let's talk about recovery a little bit. Read a book called The Purpose of Life by Rick Warren. Read a book of Dr. LaShan. I wrote books on it. I wrote a book, Healing Cancer with the Power of Your Mind. It's on Amazon. I think that's worth reading. Let me read it again. Healing Cancer with the Power of Your Mind. Love, hope, faith. It summarizes the psychological aspect which I've been speaking about here. I recommend it. Real thin, can't cost much. $5-8. It's cheap. And yeah, it might be worth it to you. May save your life. So you need to participate in your health care to be healthy. You don't just say, here's a pill, take it. No, you need only this treatment. Well, you know, let me get a second opinion on occasion. It might be even helpful. And and there are upward spirals of recovery. For some people with cancer, an individual gains a new perspective on his or her problem. Get a different job, for example. A wake-up call. A new permission slip to act differently, to suspend the rules. New rules increase psychological energy. Hope and renewed desire to live. You might make a mind map of what you want to do. From now on, I've not done these things. I spoke out in the mind map. I'm going to go to church more. I'm going to get a different job. I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to eat differently. I'm going to get a second opinion. All things. So, and hope and renewed desire to live. Maybe do some meditation. Maybe some imaging. That the Pac-Man's coming in, eating up your cancer cells, and you do it twice a day. All things that could be helpful. So there's a change in the psychological state as well as a change in the physiological state. Remember, you're speaking to your body with the neurotransmitters, hormones. So, and positive and negative experiences are very important. Hutchinegger wrote this book, The Will to Live. I showed you that book a few minutes ago. My son had a patient who's a neurosurgeon too years ago, and he had a brain tumor patient, and he could tell from the MRI it was serious, although very small. So he's speaking to her, said, it looks like a malignant brain tumor to me, and the lady starts screaming. And I don't blame her. She had 4 children, no husband. I don't blame her. I don't blame her. So he does surgery on her, does a biopsy the next day, confirms the diagnosis. Oh yeah, and the night before he had told her she had 6 months to live. Give her no hope. Then next day he does a biopsy, confirms again. He says, yep, how long got to live? About 6 months. What about? You know, he's honest about. He didn't know exactly. But he came to me one day and said, Dad, I think I know what you're talking about now, because hope was not well established, you know, about, but something better than, I would prefer to have said, well, you know, and it's only a statistic. You're not a statistic, okay? And he should have said that, you know, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. Give her a big hug. So I'm going to get some other opinions, try some other chemo, maybe send you to Cincinnati or Cleveland and see if they have some other thing available. Like I did with my patient who said, I'm not going to die. Remember I told you about that guy? And the next morning, after you told her that, she was dead. You know, that's the voodoo effect. Voodoo effect, negative thinking. It affects the heart. It's like the shaman pointing at you. And she was dead the next morning due to her own neurotransmitters and adrenaline affected her heart, and she died. Instinct. It was really a mind-body neurotransmitter thing done. Something that is not well known, but it's known to me because I read and write about this. But anyway, thanks for listening to my talk here today. I think if you want to do some more reading, I mentioned some of these books to you. This PowerPoint you could pick up at the Three Rivers Pharmacy in town here. If you want to, tell Sheila you want one. We'll print some up and get it to you somehow. I'm also going to Warsaw next Saturday, 11 o'clock. I'll be giving a talk. You can pick a free one up there. Extra copies made to be available because this has a lot of information on it. But what I'm suggesting to you to prevent cancer, I told you I'd do that. But if you do have it, I still think we can increase your lifespan. I think we can increase the rate of spontaneous cures. All the information is here. I connected nutrition, which is most important, and the mind-body connection to cancer. And I did all this today because I love you, care about you. And cancer is not just about, here's your medicine. It's about some education. And you must participate in that and do some reading, some consultation, and considering half a cure with medicine anyway, you start thinking positively and do the things in nutrition that exercise I spoke about. We could probably increase this to 80%. I'm totally convinced of it. Come see us. You can see me at the pharmacy for free on Friday mornings. I'll talk to you more about this if you want. I see a lot of diabetics there. I see some cancer patients there, and I'll educate you further about this. Attend our lectures at Lutheran Hospital. Look at our YouTube sites, Facebook, Kachmann, and a lot of information available to you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.